It really is good to be back with you. I think the last time I was here, I shared with you that idea that behold, God beholding you and smiling, that we are beloved by God. And the reason that we are beloved is to be loving. Now, I know you've just finished a little series with Scott. He was telling me about of Simple Church. I noticed today as I drove I live up 39th and Central area. So as I drove down, I passed a fair number of buildings that are called church. There's a fair amount of churches in Indianapolis. I don't know if you've ever noticed that. On every corner, there's almost like 5 churches, it seems like. So there's a lot of these buildings that are churches. And I got thinking about what you guys have been talking about with Scott as far as this idea of simple church. What is a church? And what I recognize is each church that gathers on a Sunday has one of 2 choices. They can be the church, which means they are part of the church of God. They can be the church, or they can just be another church. And we got all sorts of just other churches. I don't know if we need just another church. What I have appreciated so this is the 3rd Sunday I've been here, and then my wife and I were here for one of the Friday, the new, what do you guys call that? The Friday thing, the Fresh Fruit Friday, yes. Try saying that 10 times really fast, okay? Something probably is going to come out that you shouldn't say. But anyways, but my wife and I came down and volunteered a few weeks ago at Fresh Food Friday. Here's what I really appreciate about you guys is there is this sense, every time I've been here, that you are not just another church, but that you are the church. You're just a group of people who are just trying to... Great job with the kids this morning. I mean, seriously, let's just pray and go home now because they preached it for us this morning, right? But that idea of having willpower to be kind, that's the church. By the way, a few weeks back, I was in a wedding. I was the best man in a wedding. I'm kind of old to be a best man, but I was a best man in a wedding, and I had to rent a tuxedo. I just happened to have to preach at a church the next morning, and people were like, well, you should wear the tuxedo. Get your money's worth. And I was really, really tempted. All right? Now, you may not believe this, but I can clean up. I really can. I can clean up okay. But what I recognized was if I wore a tuxedo and preached that Sunday morning, these were a bunch of people that have known me well, that it probably in the end would have been a bit of a distraction. After the first couple of minutes, then it's kind of like a distraction. So I got thinking, I could do that at church, but ultimately it would distract the people from the message. And what I wonder is, with this idea of church, of a gathering of a group of people, do we sometimes distract people from the message of Jesus by the way that we behave sometimes as a church? Because I also recognize that I had the tuxedo because I had come from a wedding, and what I got thinking is every wedding creates the possibility of a marriage. Just because you have a fancy wedding day doesn't mean you have a marriage, right? Those of you that are married, you know what I'm talking about. Marriage takes work, a lot of work. And just because you have a fancy wedding day does not mean you have a marriage. And just because a group of people gather in a building on a Sunday morning and have a little bit of worship and have a little bit of a sermon, maybe a lot of a sermon, and just gather on a Sunday morning, that doesn't mean that you're church. Church is the work that you do to express kindness and willpower the 7 days of the week. Church is what you do when you do go shopping. Church is what you do when you are sitting in a meeting where the temptation is to be selfish. Church is what you do out in the foyer, not necessarily what you do in here. And what I have experienced in my few encounters as I have come bumping up against you guys in life is you get being church. You get that it's more than what you just do here on a Sunday morning. So that's kind of what I want to talk about that for a little bit this morning, if that's okay. I want to look at a couple of stories from the life of Jesus that kind of give us a little indication, I think, of how we are to be 7 days a week. But I need to start by telling you who the Antichrist is, okay? Would that be fair? I'm going to reveal to you the Antichrist. Now, I'll just give you a couple minutes, or not even a couple minutes, but just turn to a neighbor and take a guess with your neighbor who I am going to reveal to you here in a moment who the Antichrist is. So just turn around and see if you can figure out who you think the Antichrist is. All right, we don't need no show of hands. No show of hands, okay? But I wonder how many Donalds did we get? All right, how many Hillarys did we get? How many Putins? How many Justin Trudeau? Come on, I'm Canadian. Give us Canadians a little bit of credit. Maybe we could have the Antichrist. I don't know. How many of you kind of thought maybe it's the internet? Maybe it's. I want to tell you who the Antichrist is. Are you ready? Ronald McDonald. Oh, you laugh, but I'm serious. Ronald McDonald. Yeah. Think about it. When you go to McDonald's as a child, your introduction to McDonald's was through this little box that was called a Happy Meal. Exactly. Why did we go to McDonald's to get Happy Meals? Was it for the hamburger that was in that Happy Meal? No. It wasn't for the French fries. It wasn't even for the box drink. It was for the... Exactly. You guys get it. It was for the toy. Because the toy will make us... Exactly. Now, McDonald's and Ronald, they're not idiots. They're not a bunch of idiots. What they did, they were genius. Planned obsolescence is what they put into every McDonald's toy. Every Happy Meal toy has a self-destruct mechanism. I don't know if you heard of the artist Banksy, who a little while ago, right, sold this incredible artwork that was about virtue, a little girl's virtue. And it was his comment that you cannot buy or sell virtue. And so he put a self-destruct mechanism in the frame after it was sold and it destroyed. Anyways, that's what McDonald's does with Happy Meal toys. Think about it. Every Happy Meal toy within 3 minutes is either broken or lost underneath the van seat, never to be found again, which causes us to have to turn around and go back to McDonald's to get another Happy Meal. For the hamburger? No. For the fries? No. For the drink? No. For the... Exactly. So you will be... Exactly. Now think about it. We grow up. We don't change. Our Happy Meals just become more expensive. Here's the way our world works. You got to have this, you got to have this, and you got to have this to be happy. So whether it's a possession, whether it's a position, whether it's fame, whether it's prestige, whether it's power, we have all these things that keep saying, if you have this, you will be happy. Now, I want to suggest to you that perhaps this morning, if you think of the term Antichrist, that means anti-Christ. The antithesis of Christ. In other words, kind of the opposite of what Jesus was about. And so I want to suggest to you that perhaps at times maybe the Antichrist is not a political figure that's coming. Perhaps the Antichrist is a way of life. And perhaps at times, I can't speak for you guys because I don't know you well enough, but I know at times this guy standing here in front of you, at times he lives anti the values of Christ. Because sometimes I want it to be all about my happiness. All about my happiness. A few of the books that I've been, these are my devotional books that I've read the last few months, and I noticed a theme. I was just going through them the other day. Chasing Phil. It's the adventures of two undercover agents with the world's most charming con man. The Feather Thief. It's all about people who steal feathers to make fly fishing stuff. It's a killing on Bay Street. I Can't Breathe. It's the Eric Garner killing on Staten Island. A couple of the other ones I read. One was Into the Raging Sea, which was a story of an American freighter a few years back that went off the coast of Puerto Rico and 33 lives were lost. The Waters Will Rise, kind of looking at how water levels are rising in the world. Just finishing up What the Eyes Don't See. It's the story of the Flint water crisis. These have kind of been my devotional reading. Charles Spurgeon said years ago that when he prepared a sermon, he had a Bible in one hand and a newspaper in another hand. And what I noticed is there's been a theme kind of through all of these different books that I have been reading. And I want to just read you a line from this one because it kind of sets up that theme. This is about the Flint water crisis. And she says, "It is a story about what happens when the very people responsible for keeping us safe care more about money and power than they care about us or our children." A couple of the other books I read one was The American Fix, which is looking at the opiate crisis. A theme through all of these books, whether it was people stealing feathers, whether it was the opiate crisis, whether it was a killing of a black man in Staten Island, the theme through all of these books was this idea that these are stories about what happens when systems and people look at money and power and position and prestige as more important than people. And I got thinking, if there's one group of people in the world, one collective of people that should not be influenced or swayed by the values of the Happy Meal culture, it should be the people who are known as the church, who say, no, to us it is more important that we have a fresh food Friday, that we have a Saturday food distribution, that throughout the week we are caring for people, that we have prayer requests that say, let's pray for the children of the world who are orphans, who are sick, who are going to bed hungry. If there is one group of people who are not influenced and swayed by the Happy Meal culture, it should be the church. It should be the church. So I want to just point out to you two lessons. I'll try not to take too long on these stories, but I love the stories of Jesus. And one story is found in Luke chapter 8. It's the story of the time when Jesus and the disciples, they get in the boat, they go across the Sea of Galilee, and they're going to the region of the Gerasenes. And scholars tell us this is the only time that Jesus ever went to this particular region. So they go across the boat, and to kind of refresh your memory, it's the passage where partway across the lake, Jesus is sleeping, and they have a big storm, and the disciples are all panicking, and these are hardened fishermen, but they're panicking, and they go and they wake Jesus up, and he calms the storm down, and then they land. So I love this picture. They've been out on this harrowing journey on the lake, right? They land, and the disciples, I can just see them piling out of the boat on top of each other. They're kind of like the shopping on Black Friday. They can't wait to get ahead. They're totally selfish. Get me to dry land. They're kissing the ground. Oh, it's dry. But then they look up, and what Luke records is when they look up, they see this guy running down the beach to them, and this guy is a rather unique individual. I say unique because Luke says three things about this guy. Says that he had been chained, and he's broken the chains, he's flashing them, he's screaming, and he's naked. Now, it's not often that somebody like that comes running up the beach towards you. So the disciples are kissing the ground. They're so glad to be on dry ground. They look up and they see this guy running down the beach naked at them, screaming, shaking, and they're like in the boat, out in the middle of the lake again. They can't wait to get away from him. And it's this situation where this guy then comes to Jesus, and Jesus recognizes that the man is filled with demons, and tells the demons, that the demons beg Jesus, don't send us to the abyss. And there's a herd, if you remember, there's a herd of 2,000 pigs off on the side of the hill, and Jesus sends the demons into the pigs. So Luke chapter 8 is that story where these 2,000 pigs go running to the edge of the cliff and go over the cliff and land in the water below, and they're all drowned. And so what happens is it says that those who were watching the pigs, who were taking care of the pigs, which is a really good summer job, by the way. You don't want to have to be a shepherd because shepherds are kind of dumb. They're dumb animals. They take a lot of care. You got one sheep that walks along, falls into a ditch. All the other sheep jump in on top. And then the shepherd's got to get them up. They're stupid animals. Pigs, however, they're not like that. You got one pig walks along, falls into the ditch. The other pigs look stupid pig and turn and walk away. Pigs, I have friends who have been pig farmers, and they say an incredibly intelligent animal, pretty easy to take care of. So these people who have this cushy summer job and they're taking care of the pigs, they see what's happening and they run into the town to tell everybody about it. Because really what just happened was, for the first time in history, you had pigs in space, for those of you who are Muppet fans. And you had 2,000 pigs landing in the, I guess you could call it the Bay of Pigs. All right, I promise this is not a bunch of hogwash. But just picture these 2,000 pigs swine diving. All right, well, so they were deviled ham, so you got to admit that. All right, I'll try to resist. But it's unusual to see 2,000 pigs committing mass suicide. Now, come on, that one was good. That one was good. We'll end there, okay? We'll end there. All right. So they run in, they tell everybody in the town, and everybody comes running out to see what has happened. What's unusual here about that is what historians tell us is the reason that everybody ran out to see what had happened, and the reason that the pig herders went and told everybody, was everybody in the region would have had an investment in this herd of pigs. That the pigs would not have been owned by one farmer, but that this was a cooperative herd. And so we all had a share. Some of us owned 2 pigs, some of us owned 3 pigs, some of us maybe owned 5 pigs, but we all had a small investment in this herd of pigs. And we've lost our pigs. So everybody comes running out to see what happens. And when they came, what Luke records is they saw this man sitting there, dressed and in his right mind. So there was a transformation that had happened to this guy that was both outward and it was also evident inwardly. There was a transformation. Now, I want you for just a moment to picture the most evil person that you know. The most evil person that you know. Now, it may be you know him personally or it's a person you know of, but that evil person, that person is Mr. Rogers and Captain Kangaroo and Santa Claus combined compared to the person you just thought of. This guy was the very epitome of evil in that region. The people constantly chained him up and he would break the chains and he would shake them and he would run around screaming, and he was the very epitome of evil. And everybody comes and they look at him and they see that he has been transformed. And they ask what happened. And the report is it was Jesus. I would have thought that perhaps the response then from the people would have been, wow, Jesus, could you come with me to our village? Because my brother needs you. My sister needs you. My friend needs you. My child needs you. You would think that perhaps that would have been the response, but you know what the response of the people was? Luke records, and it's one of the saddest pictures, I think, in the scriptures. Luke says the people were afraid and asked Jesus to leave. And then Luke records this. So Jesus got into the boat and left. And I wonder, as Jesus and the disciples were making their way back across the lake, if perhaps they had a conversation about what happens when your pigs are more important than the people in your lives. In other words, when the stuff that you have, the possessions, the positions, the power, the prestige, when all of those things become more important than the people in your life. That's the only time that history records that Jesus went to that area. And they were afraid they might lose something more if Jesus stuck around. Now that's Jesus. Let's look at one other quick story though. And that's a chapter before, in Luke chapter 7, where Jesus and the disciples are walking along and a group of people come to him and report this. What Luke records is a centurion whose servant was sick and about to die. The centurion sent people to Jesus to report this and to say, if you could just say a word and you could fix this. Let me read that to you. I want you to notice this. There, a centurion's servant, whom his master valued highly, was sick and about to die. The centurion heard of Jesus and sent some of the elders of the Jews to him, asking him to come and heal his servant. When they came to Jesus, they pleaded earnestly with him. This man deserves to have you do this because he loves our nation and built our synagogue. So Jesus went with them. He was not far from the house when the centurion sent friends to say to him, Lord, don't trouble yourself, for I do not deserve to have you come under my roof. That is why I did not even consider myself worthy to come to you. But say the word, and my servant will be healed. When Jesus heard this, he was amazed at him. And turning to the crowd following him, he said, I tell you, I have not found such great faith, even in Israel. Then the men who had been sent returned to the house and found the servant well. 2 or 3 things I want you to notice here. When Jesus heard this, he was amazed by the centurion. Now, I get that Jesus amazes us. You know, he did the feeding of the 5,000. He did the feeding of the 4,000. He does all these healings. He's pretty amazing. But what I take away from this passage is something about the centurion's faith amazed Jesus. In other words, caused Jesus to stop and say, wow, that's amazing. Which says to me, Gary, you and I can do the same thing. We can do things with our life, with our expression of being the church 7 days of the week, being a place that says, wherever you are on life's journey, you're welcome here at my table. That we can live in such a way, with the willpower and the kindness, in such a way that Jesus gathers a bunch of people up in heaven and says, look down at them. Look at those people at Faith UCC. That's pretty amazing. What was it that was amazing about this centurion? Real quickly. Centurion is a Roman soldier, but not just any Roman soldier. He's a Roman leader. The Roman soldiers were in this area because they were occupying forces. They were not good friends with the Jewish culture. The Roman soldiers were not able to have Thanksgiving dinner with their family. They were not able to have Christmas vacation with their family because they had to be over in Galilee and Capernaum and all these areas because they were the occupying forces. So they didn't like the Jews. The Jews didn't like the Romans. Roman centurion is there. He's one of the bosses keeping all of this going. Now, a Roman centurion, in order to be the boss, had to be strong, had to be powerful, had to make sure that people understood, I'm in charge. So you don't show any weakness. But what I want you to notice is this. The centurion says to Jesus, through other people, says, I did not consider myself worthy to even be in your presence. And he also says, Lord. Now, if you're a Roman soldier, there's only one person you do this to. And that's Caesar. Because when you say Lord, you are saying, I bow down and worship you. And only one person as a Roman soldier gets the title Lord, and it's Caesar. And notice what happens here. The centurion says, or the centurion sends a message, I'm not even worthy to be in your presence, Lord. And notice how he does it. He doesn't do it really secretly, like, hey, Jesus, don't let anybody know this, but I'm not worthy to be in your presence. He says it to other people so that they can also say, hey, do you know what the centurion's? You get what I'm saying, right? The centurion is willing to risk all of his power, all of his position, all of his reputation. And why? Because of his servant, who's sick and about to die. In that culture, a servant was simply a tool. And when your tool was broken, it's not a shovel, it's a pitchfork. And when it's broken, you just throw it away because it's no good anymore. That's what they would do with servants who were sick and about to die, just throw them away. But this man had such compassion for his servant. He saw him as a person, and he was willing to risk all of his reputation on behalf of his servant. Think about that. And that amazed Jesus. Be a group of people who amaze Jesus, not just when you gather here on Sunday morning, but be a simple church that amazes Jesus every day of the week. Amen? This is our prayer to close my part. You did it last time. Read it.
I am a little pencil in the hand of a writing God who is sending a love letter to the world.
Amen.
Amen.